Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Give one. Thank you and welcome to the Land Grant Seminar Series 2025 fall semester. Welcome those of you who are not been before here in the seminar series. I just want to tell you that since its launch in October 23rd, 2013, the Land Grant Seminar Series has grown into a dynamic platform for research, innovation, extension, and knowledge exchange. With 261 seminars hosted to date, we've welcomed a diverse range of experts from universities to leaders in state and federal agencies, private companies, and research institutes. Today, we are honored to welcome a national leader in higher education and research, with decades of experience driving changes in academic and public sector. Dr. Gerard Souza, Dean of the College of Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources, and the Director of the Land Grant Programs, will introduce our distinguished guests, and I will moderate this session, question and answer. Dr. D'Souza.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And good morning, colleagues. Such a great day when you can bring such a high-profile speaker here to talk to us about higher education and some of the challenges confronting us, but also what we can do as educators to find solutions and, more importantly, to implement solutions. So Dr. Ramaswamy comes to us all the way from Redmond, Washington. He made the trip here just to be with us today and tomorrow. Along the way, we took him on a farm tour. He's going to meet with researchers and staff later today, meeting with the provost as well today, and then tomorrow he'll meet with the president and so on. So he's got a packed agenda. And so let me briefly introduce the speaker. Following a long career in academia and government, Sunny Ramaswamy recently retired after serving for almost 7 years as president of the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, which accredits higher education institutions across the U.S. Previously, President Barack Obama appointed Dr. Ramaswamy to direct NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which catalyzes transformative discoveries, innovations, and education to address societal changes impacting food, nutrition, and health, agriculture, and natural resource systems. And as you folks know, NIFA is our largest funding agency. Dr. Ramaswamy served as Dean of Oregon State University's College of Ag, Director of Purdue's Agricultural Research Program, a University Distinguished Professor, and Head of Entomology at Kansas State University, and also Professor of Entomology at Mississippi State University. And it was there that I encountered him briefly. I was just finishing up my PhD, and he was just joining the faculty at Mississippi State. And so we overlapped by a few months. But, you know, I've known Sunny for almost 50 years now. As it turns out, we got on the same bus at the same bus stop in Bangalore, India, where we both went to the same university. He was a few years senior to me, but we go back many years. So such a pleasure to interact with him here again at this stage and this audience. And I've been trying to get him to come to campus. The last time was 2020. We were almost there, and guess what? COVID hit and everything shut down. So we're very pleased to have him here on campus again. So Sunny is the recipient of numerous research grants from NIFA, NIH, NSF, EPA, USAID, and commodity groups. He has mentored numerous high school undergraduate and graduate students, along with postdocs and visiting scientists, and has published extensively. Dr. Ramaswamy's BS in Agriculture and MS in Entomology are from the University of Agricultural Sciences, Bangalore, India. His PhD in entomology is from Rutgers University. He undertook postdoctoral research at Michigan State University and is a graduate of Harvard's Management Development Program. He is an avid reader, writer, rides his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and even knows how to ride a horse. I have to have him teach me, but he loves to travel with his family. So Dr. Ramaswamy today is going to give us some very provocative, thoughtful discussion about the state of higher education. So make sure you're tuned in because some of what he's going to have to say will resonate with us, but also a call for action. But not only is he going to identify the problem, but also the solution. So thanks to our online audience for joining us as well. And so Dr. Ramaswamy, take it away, sir.
Thanks so much. Okay, as Josh is getting this set up, thanks again very much for a wonderful introduction, Gerard, and thank you so much for having me here. Like they say, better late than never. And, you know, he did invite me here several years ago. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We tried multiple times. It just didn't work out. So glad to be here now, to be on campus. This is a sort of a homecoming for me because I know several of you here, and it's so wonderful to see you again. And it's been a few years. I was here last, I think, in 2015, if I remember correctly. And also I got to, you know, run into Leanne as well, whom I've known since Oregon State University days. And so wonderful to be back on your campus again. You have a beautiful campus, and I had the privilege of meeting one of your, you know, phenomenal students, Rahim Murray. Very impressed with that young man, and had a privilege of having a short conversation with your provost as well. So as Gerard said in his introductory comments, can you hear me in the back there? All right. So
The mic is coming.
okay, no worries. I'll use my classroom voice. If you don't hear me, let me know, please. Put your hand up or something. So as Gerard said, today I'm going to share with you some thoughts on higher education. The state of it, where are we going? What are we doing and things like that. And really, as I've been giving this some thought, given it a lot of thought, as a matter of fact, as you heard, I have been an accreditor for the last several years now, and up in the Pacific Northwest. And we pushed our institutions to really rethink what education is all about, higher education is all about. And I'll share with you what the state of play is currently, and then the rationale for why we need to start rethinking and reimagining higher education itself. So in terms of, you know, the lay of the land as I speak, I should share some thoughts with you. I'll give you, you know, a few thoughts on the trends that we see in higher education across America, in society, for that matter. Well, share with you some thoughts on what is the purpose of higher education? Why are we all here? Aside from getting a paycheck, there's something much more important about the roles that you have as educators, right? I'll speak to the value proposition of higher education itself. And then I'll speak to, you know, this whole idea of reimagining, re-engineering and things like that. There's some strategies that you may want to incorporate into your thinking as well. And then I'll leave you with a few thoughts on some opportunities that are available to us. And then, you know, leave some time for some Q&A and discussion as well. So at a very high level, at a 40,000-foot level, when you look at what's happening in society, whether it's here in the United States or across the globe, there are a number of things that are impacting higher education. These societal trends are everything from competition to increasing population, changing demographics, to the disparities that we see. Never mind, regardless of what people say, there are significant disparities that we see. Okay, those disparities that we need to think of as well. And then, of course, you know, you've got big data and you got AI and things like that. And I understand that I'm going to, you know, try to get to see Dr. Srivastava's lab, I think, about AI as well here, the kind of work that y'all are doing here as well. All of these are having an impact on everything that we do. It's not just higher education, but what we do as humanity itself. And then, of course, you know, you've got also, you know, issues related to mental health and physical health. And I'm sure, you know, those of you that do this for a living as a professor or a staff member or whatever, you're seeing these impacts on the young people that come, the students that come to your, to work with you as well. And, okay, thank you. Sorry, commercial break. Okay, ooh, that's better. All right, I'm getting a lot of feedback too, so you can turn it down a tad bit, please. I'm a loudmouth, by the way. So, so in any case, you got these other things that are going on, whether it's climate change or, the gig economy that we talk about, we got a number of people that take on these short-term jobs, and whether it's driving an Uber or, Uber Eats or whatever else that they're doing as well. All of this is part of the context that we have. And you're going to be teaching, by the way, in this context. And there's also a lot of questions about the value proposition. As a matter of fact, as we were discussing earlier today with your provost, there's this false narrative that's been foisted on us by some individuals who got a fantastic education in some of the top universities in America. And they claim that, well, you don't need a college education anymore. Just go and work, do whatever you want to. As a matter of fact, there's even a movement across America that undergraduate degrees are worthless. You don't need them. You don't really need college education. Just go and work as a technician. And I tell you, as I shared with your provost, the Chinese who are eating our lunch today will be eating our dinner too, because they're so much better at the technical stuff than we are. What keeps America ahead of the game is this, that we put a man on the moon. We're the first ones to do it. These are the things that set us apart. We invented the internet, for example. These are the things that set us apart as well. So along that, of course, we've got this environment of fake news and alternative facts. It's almost as if you keep repeating and pushing really hard, this fake news is the reality. Unfortunately, that's what's happening. And in many ways, I look at myself and us collectively as educators, and I blame myself for for having allowed these alternative facts to have taken over of the work that we do as well. There's also hyperpartisanship in America that we see, and by the way, this is being exported to the rest of the world. We see this on the news every day. And along with that, of course, there's the science denialism. In fact, children are told, don't go to college, don't go to finish high school or whatever, because who cares? Who needs all of that? Go work with your hands and earn a living or whatever it is. That's the conversation that we have in America. That's the part of the societal trends that we've got. And then, of course, 2020 continues to reverberate, not just in America, but globally as well, right? This whole thing about vaccine hesitation and the anti-vaxxer movement, the horrific killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and all of these individuals. They want to shove it under the rug and have us all forget about it. We cannot. We should not forget about any of this. It's really important for us to think of why it is that these hard-fought rights that we've got, they're being basically eliminated with the false narrative that's been generated as well. And so that 2020 is impacting everything that we do, even today. In fact, every day, I'm sure when you read your newspaper or pull up your phone and look at your social media feeds and things like that, you'll see these things that are being bandied about as well. And these social trends, as I said earlier, have contributed to continuing to exacerbate the disparities that we've got in America, these societal trends that we've got. The social injustice, hate crimes. It's almost become the norm across America. Conflicts and protests. And access to what we all as having, as being citizens of this nation, as being residents of this nation, expected that we could get an education, we could get a job or whatever else there is, but all of that is literally out the window when you're thinking about it. And then you've got these other issues that you've got, issues related to these contentious conversations and pushback about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Pushback about critical race theory. Never mind the folks that are pushing back on these things. I don't believe they read it. I don't believe they understand it. But it's just a knee-jerk reaction that they've got, a reflex reaction That's what it's all about. They want to push back on it. And hunger and poverty and environmental racism. The impacts of redlining from 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago, even in Seattle, Washington, one of the wealthiest cities in America, a progressive city. The impacts of redlining from the 1930s on African Americans, on Japanese Americans, on Chinese Americans continues to reverberate. That's happening as well. And then we got homelessness and mass incarceration, the structural disparities, inequities that we've got. And then, people claim, well, there's nothing wrong with this, that we're apparently somehow, I saw this, I'm writing an essay on it, that DEI is not PIE, pie. It's not like a pie, It's not, once you get a slice, that's gone. It's not. DEI does not imply that somehow we're taking something away from somebody else. It does not do that. It's a misinterpretation of what is actually supposed to be happening and is happening. We've got data to prove that as well. So that's the context that we've got. And these voting rights that people fought for, going back to the mid-1960s, approximately about 50 years ago, when Lyndon Johnson, a lot of people, some of you sitting here, your parents, your grandparents fought for it. And those are all being basically watered down or eliminated, changed. We're seeing that happening in this country, sadly. And that's continuing to exacerbate these disparities. So then when you narrow it down to the world that we live in higher education, these societal trends, these disparities and things like that, they impact the things that you're doing every day in every aspect of the work that you do. There's chaos at the federal level. Of course, we know that. All these executive orders and things that are coming out constantly, there's a barrage of it. The muzzling of people. In quotes, free speech, this right that every one of us has, is free speech from their perspective, not free speech from the perspective of all of us. That's being eliminated. And there are questions being asked, as I said, about the value proposition of higher education itself. Who needs to go to college? There's no need to. And as I shared with your provost this morning, paraphrasing Pogo, I've seen the enemy, and he's us collectively. We're the enemy for letting this happen, for the conversation to have been hijacked by some people. That's what's happened here. It's been hijacked. And then we got, the demographic cliff. Population numbers are going down very significantly. There's no doubt about it, that we're making, fewer babies in this country. We're seeing today, we're only making about 1.8 babies per couple, by the way. To continue to maintain our population, you got to have 2.1 babies. Okay? So we're slowly dissipating. Europe's already been there. Iran's already been there. China has already been there. China, that came up with the one-child policy because they had way too many children. They put a gun to people's heads and said you can only have one child. Well, guess what happens? About 30 years later, they realize they don't have enough babies coming along to run the Chinese economy. So they opened that up to where they're promoting people to have more than one child in China. Korea, Japan, all of these countries, and America finally got caught up. Now, here in America, in part, the declining populations has been offset by people like me coming to this country from other countries, right? We came here, we brought that education, we're contributing to this society, and we've made children here, our children have gone to school and things like that too. So there's been a bit of an offset, but starting a few years ago, but particularly now, even that immigration spigot is being turned off. So to pick those crops in Texas and Florida and California and Washington State, those apples that we get from Washington State, we're in a whole lot of hurt. I'm sure you've seen that as well, because we don't have enough people to go do that. And our colleges, our enrollments are declining, right? And our universities. And so that's all part of it. Our infrastructure's, the decrepitude of infrastructure is mind-boggling. When I was the director of NIFA, we did a national study of all land-grant universities, including our 1890s and others, 1994s. And some of you may remember that study as well. We have almost about a $40 billion at that time in 2015, I think, $40 billion need to update our infrastructure across America. Okay, we're going to undertake, I shouldn't say include me, all of y'all are going to undertake 21st century science, by the way. If you look at America in 18th and 19th century buildings, maybe 20th century buildings. Yeah, you're blessed, by the way, being in this state, and you've got, good resources to be able to replace and all that too. Then you got all this competition, the global competition, corporates, again, the provost and we were discussing about, Google University and Apple University and Amazon University and all that. So how do we, step up? Or do we say, well, y'all go ahead, take it over. We don't need to be here anymore. We're going to just close shop here and go home. Go do something else. And then you got the changing economy. You've got these achievement gaps, this, in quotes, disappearing males. I'll speak to that a little bit more. This is the context that we've got. And by the way, all of this has contributed to this incredible amount of uncertainty. But the uncertainty comes particularly from what's happening in Washington, D.C. That's contributing to this environment that we've got here today. So I want to say a few words about these achievement gaps, the very last bullet that I had. So if you look at these achievement gap headlines in the last few months, and I'm sure those of you that are, in this world of education, you're seeing this as well. So the Pell Divide, right? How four-year institutions are failing to graduate low and moderate income students. By the way, this is across the board, across America. That's what's happening. Shame on us. We made a promise to students. You come here to my institution. I promise you're going to get a fantastic education. You're going to get the skills and knowledge to go do whatever you want to. Solve the problems of mankind or whatever you want to do. That's the promise we make. And yet, we're not doing what we need to be doing. And the dropout rate from first generation undergrads in the United States is pretty dang high. First generation college. Historically Black institutions, right? There's a stubborn gender enrollment gap that continues to grow. The male exodus. Males don't want to go to college. As a matter of fact. And others, where art thou? Because I take on that film that came out a few years ago. Because young Black males are a disappearing species in our higher education environment. Collectively, we have to take this on. Collectively, it's our responsibility to figure out what it is, why it is that situation, and then bring them back in again. A little bit of data for you. So if you look at the gender divide, this is for 2023 data. Enrollment is a pretty significant difference, about a third more females in our universities and colleges than males. If you look at the graduation rate, there's a doubling, 2 times as many females are graduating as male. Why? What's happening? There's something, we figure this out. What are the data telling us? Do we have the data even? So there's something that we need to be concerned about. Outsiders are going to be throwing rocks at us. We need to own this. These disappearing males that we need to be concerned about. It's everybody having an opportunity, everybody getting an education, everybody graduating in a reasonable amount of time with the least amount of indebtedness and going on to becoming contributing members of society. If you look at Pell and first generation divide, right? Between Pell and non-Pell, huge, significant difference. If you look at 6-year graduation rates between students that are first generation and children of parents with a bachelor's degree, It's mind-boggling. What is it about these students that these other students aren't able to achieve? If you get a chance to Google the name Raj Chetty, Chetty. Raj Chetty has done some pretty cool research on this. And, you know, going back to my former boss, Barack Obama saying, you know, the zip code that you're born in should not determine where you end up going, right? This is indicative of the zip code situation that we've got as well. And this should not be. Again, I've seen the enemy, and he's us, collectively. Shame on us. We need to be owning this, figuring out why it is that this is not happening. So what is that value proposition that we as educators might offer? So think of the purpose of higher education. I don't know if anyone of you really steps back as a professor, as an instructor, as an administrator, steps back and says, what is the value proposition? What's the purpose of education? Okay? And of course, you know, it is about intellectual growth. It is about technical knowledge. You know, a student comes to the College of Ag, gets a degree in econ or plant science or soil science or whatever. They get this technical knowledge. It is about non-cognitive core competencies. Remember, this is a land-grant university. This lecture series is the land-grant lecture series. In it, Justin Smith Morrill, when he articulated this vision, he thought it was not just enough to have this cognitive and technical knowledge, but these non-cognitive, critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills, those are really very important. In fact, multiple studies have been done, including by my organization, my former organization, where we've seen that technical knowledge, the shelf life is only maybe 3 to 5 years, depending on the endeavor that you're in. Think of AI, how fast it's changing, right? And the impact of AI on all the things that we do. Versus these critical thinking, problem solving, the shelf life is lifelong. So we hearken back to our DNA of what Justin Smith Morrill expected out of the Land Grant Act of 1862 and 1890, and make sure that we're incorporating those. Along with that, we want our students to be informed, to become civically engaged. Does Prairie View A&M University here teach anything about democracy and civic engagement and all that required of all students? Okay, only I was looking at him, sorry. Yeah, well, so this is something we need to think of. Again, to look at the context that we're in America, this highly hyper-partisan situation that we've had. Students need to learn what is democracy? What's at stake? This First Amendment right about free speech. Do we even engage in those conversations in our classrooms? I dare say we don't. Right? And so, informed civic engagement, professionalism, ethics, that it's not okay to go rip off somebody. It's not okay to be corrupt. At the highest echelons of America, we've got the most intense corruption that is being exhibited. And this is something we need to be concerned about collectively. So we got to inculcate that. It doesn't, you know, we got to do it in our homes with our children. It happens if you're, you know, church going or whatever. It happens potentially, hopefully it happens there. It happens in school. It happens in college. But what I've discovered is it doesn't happen in many of these places. So we're almost like the last resort in college to be able to inculcate those sorts of ideas as well. The idea of lifelong learning. Your provost again brought this up. Education, part of it is to help inculcate positive health outcomes. That you're eating better, you're thinking better, you're taking care of yourself, taking care of your family and your community and things like that. And it goes on, you know, it's about addressing the injustices, the disparities that we've got, promoting social and economic mobility, et cetera, et cetera. That's the purpose. So take a deep breath, step back. I'm an entomologist, right? I'm teaching entomology 101. But what does entomology 101 have to do with all of this? Yeah, it's got multiple places where we can incorporate these ideas to be inculcated in these students as well. Something for us to consider about the value proposition, right? Accreditation. How many of you were involved? When was your last accreditation here? 2020? How many of you were involved in accreditation when the SAC COC team was on? Shame on you. Seriously. Only 4 people put their hands up. Students, faculty, staff. Everyone needs to be engaged in this. If you're not engaged in it, somebody else is going to come and destroy the system that was invented in America 150 years ago, that other countries are emulating. Oh, by the way, we're going to get rid of that too now, because apparently we don't like how accreditation is done in this country anymore. Okay? We got to be involved in these things. And what is the purpose of accreditation? The way it's been articulated through the Higher Education Act, that was passed a few years ago. It hadn't been updated, by the way. Again, the proverbial kicking of the can that happens. And so it's about educational quality, sustainability, et cetera. It is about, meeting these standards and requirements. And if you're doing right, if you meet it, now obviously, what happens is the president, I would write a letter to my university saying, you will be undergoing your accreditation visit. And the president sends it to the provost. Provost, take care of this. Provost sends it to what is referred to as an accreditation liaison officer. ALO, take care of it. ALO goes and sits in his or her office, collects all the data, puts it all together with very little engagement of the faculty and staff and students, who are the most important part of this education, this accreditation. And then submits the report. And this team comes on your campus. They spend a few days, look at what's happening, say, I bless you, son, daughter, you're okay. Go for another 5, 8, 10 years or whatever it is. Right? It's us. It's our baby. We need to be involved in it. It's about institutional reputation. It's about money, by the way. If you don't pass muster, you're not going to get your money from the federal government. Maybe that's not going to happen anymore. Maybe it's all going to disappear. Nobody is going to get any money from the feds anymore because you can all fend for yourselves. But that's the basis upon which this has been built. It's about achievement, student learning, student success. It's about quality assurance. A student graduating from Prairie View of A&M University, if he or she goes to another institution to get a veterinary degree, to get a medical degree, to go work in Microsoft or Exxon or whatever, there's a stamp of approval that says this student has received an education from an institution that has been deemed to meet the standards and eligibility requirements. So you can rest assured, if you hire that individual, that they're going to have a great education that they're going to come to you with. And, really, I want you to think about this. This accreditation is not some bureaucratic whatever happens with the ALO and so on. But really, it is about self-improvement. That's what it's all about. Accreditation is about self-improvement. And it's about institutions becoming more effective, becoming a learning organization. It is, the institutional critical thinking, because you're looking at data. And, that's the joke that, you're looking at the data, warts and all, you can tell how beautiful you are or ugly you are. Right? Use those data to inform you, seeing where you come from, where do you want to go, what do you want to do in future when you grow up. It's about infrastructure. It's about the processes that you want to improve. It's about continuous improvement. Adhering to this principle of continuous improvement is a critically important aspect of higher education. So we talk about education. The idea of education is that we want our young people, I should say students, I shouldn't say young people anymore, students to develop the knowledge and skills so there's a change in behavior. They here, this level of knowledge is how we want to do it as well. So with that as the context, what do we do? Do we sit here and go, woe is me, it's not my fault, it's all of them, in all the legislatures and, governor's offices, the federal government, that's, it's me, it's us, collectively. is on us. We got to own it. It's our responsibility. We have a very, very critically important, significant role to play in this. To think of this whole enterprise of higher education itself. The chatter that's going, that is creating these constraints and shutting these institutions down. There are a number of universities that have been threatened, intimidated, and shut down. Dissent is shut down. Comes down to that phrase right there, students and closing achievement gaps. That's what it's all about. Bottom line, it's our responsibility to make sure that every student is given a promise. You review, you're going to get this. You're going to leave, and you're going to do great side. Have that American realize, have that, whatever you want to do, achieve, solve the problem of climate change, solve the problem of nutritional insecurity, whatever else that we've, right? That's what it's about. And those achievement gaps that I referred to. We've got some serious work to do in this country. It's terrible. When you look at graduation rates in America, across the board, 1 out of 2 students graduates on a 6-year basis. Shame on us. 1 out of 2. That means there's 1 student that's lost through the cracks. What are we doing? What's wrong with us? Like people say, if you're a business, you're going to be shut down. Because if you're manufacturing some sort of a widget, if only half of them make it through, I'm going to shut you down. And that's the conversation we're having. We're going to shut these universities, these colleges down. Is there even a purpose to us being in existence? Right? And, oh, by the way, if you look at students that come from, underserved communities, underserved backgrounds and things like that. By the way, I got rid of the word minority from my dictionary, my personal dictionary, because it somehow implies that you're less than. I never use that word, minority. Because there's students that come from underserved communities, that disadvantaged communities, that we got to make sure that we have to see what it is that we can do to help every individual that comes to our institution. So that's what it is. It's about closing those achievement gaps. Okay. And I've come up with a strategy here about 4 or 5 years ago. I conjured up this idea of a mnemonic. A mnemonic, as you know, is something that reminds what things are all about. A, B, C, D, E, F. As an approach, it's one of the approaches, not the approach. It's one of the approaches that you want to use about promoting student success and closing those achievement gaps that I referred to as well. A is for attendance and advising. It's a really important part of it. And hands-on advising, that intrusive advising is really important. As I shared with the approach, professors, instructors are the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are going to engage with the students. They know every student. Is that student attending my class? Why is that student disappearing? Hadn't been there. That disappearing male, what happened? So pick up the phone, digitally nudge, right? Say, hey, what's up? Where are you at? Can I come and talk to you? Etc. Right? The advising, I refer to as intrusive advising. Be intrusive in this whole effort. Okay? And so those two go hand in hand, by the way. And so many universities, they have hired these professional advisors. And as I shared with the provost, Cal Poly, for example, has 1 advisor for 1,000 students. What is that advisor going to be able to do for those 1,000 students? Probably nothing. And you divide that 1,000 by that 1, you see the number of minutes that that individual can spend per semester or term or whatever it is that you have. Okay? And so really, you got to have the boots. To me, probably the most important person in this effort is the individual that's the boots on the ground, the instructor, the professor that's teaching that particular class. Because you have the most knowledge, keep track of it, And if something is amiss or remiss, work on it. B is for behavior, right? Again, the student is falling asleep, not paying attention. They're with their device in their hand, they're looking at their devices. What is it? Why are they doing all this? I mean, am I the bad guy, the teacher, as the instructor? Am I such a boring instructor that they're falling asleep or, not wanting to pay attention? What am I doing as an instructor? Do I need some reskilling as an instructor? What's the role of the university to provide that sort of a reskilling help as well to that instructor? Particularly today in America, the fentanyl crisis and, easy availability of drugs and things like that. And also many students, by the way, the disappearing male in part is because they got to go find a job. They got to put food on the table for their family. They get married when they're young. They got a family and things like that too. And they're absolutely tired, working all night, low-wage job. And then they come here, they're sitting in class, they're falling asleep. They've not had any breakfast. They've not had any food. As a matter of fact, Michigan State University did this study here about 4 years ago, showed that hunger amongst college students is rampant in America. America can feed the world. Our farmers are amazing. I am the beneficiary. Gerard's the beneficiary. I'm going to just include the two of us of the investments that American system of education and American farmers invested in me, fed me when I was growing up, by the way. Right? We can feed the world. Shame on us as a nation that we're seeing students, college students and high school kids not able to feed them, find food on the table. Oh, they're homeless, by the way. We have a lot of students, we saw this particularly during the pandemic. They were taking online classes. They were going to libraries and other parking lots to access Wi-Fi because they didn't have it at home. They couldn't afford it at home. We invented Wi-Fi, by the way. We invented the internet. What's wrong with this picture, right? So behaviors, got to keep track of it. C's for courses, right? A lot of students, they're on track. They want to finish this degree in about 4 years, right? Maybe 5, maybe 6. Oh, by the way, I'm almost at the end. These 3 courses that I absolutely need for my degree in engineering or math or economics or whatever it is, not available because the provost, in their infinite wisdom, decided I got to cut budget here. We're going to eliminate some of these because your classes, Gerard, aren't meeting the minimum number of 25 students or whatever it is that we need. You can't just have a course with 5 students. So Gerard says, okay, we'll do it. You get rid of the course. Well, here's the student that's going to graduate without that course. That's not going to be possible because you're accredited. Your education program, your economics program, your physical therapy, they're all accredited by your engineering program. They're all accredited. They have certain expectations about the courses they take. So what if our advisors and others, they say, okay, student, you need this required courses, these 3 courses. By the way, it's offered online. You can take it from Texas A&M, you take it from Purdue, you can take it from Timbuktu State University, as the case might be. Right? When I was, in college, there was no such thing for us. You're stuck with what you got. Today, it's fantastic. Students, by the way, I use the metaphor of honeybees, being an entomologist, right? They go and they're optimally foraging for honey, getting the best they can. Oh, by the way, they leave, they go work because they have to anymore. Having 2 or 3 or 4 jobs is a requirement for you here, by the way, in the United States. Because it's free. Here, we got into this whole mode of pay as you go. And tuition kept going up at like almost 2 times the rate of inflation in America for several years. Healthcare and tuition, college tuition. So we can make that happen today. Make sure that goes back to that intrusive advising. Know who your students are and things like that. Data. If you cannot measure, there's no way you can make progress. You can make changes. Right? We got to collect data. We got to disaggregate it. Students, male, female, where they come from. Are they binary? Are they transgender? I mean, all of this is important for us. You can't just mandate or legislate, say, no, that's not gonna happen. We gotta collect these data. We gotta know, are they on Pell or not? What's their background? Were they on school lunch program when they're growing up? Because if you're on school lunch program, more than likely, you didn't go to some fancy schmancy school where you got international baccalaureate and all these fancy things, you know, AP classes and all that. You're not prepared. Like those kids that went to those schools, right? So we got to collect these data and use those data to inform us as to what kind of changes we need to make so we can go ahead and make the kinds of changes to promote excellence in the students that we're supporting. Experiential education for E. Go again, hearkening back to Justin Smith Morrill. Speaks about, one of the things that he speaks about is hands-on learning. The A and M's speaks about practical education in the agricultural and mechanic arts. If you've not read the Land Grant Act, it's 2 pages. Only 2 pages. You can find it on the internet. Right? It's in my former office in Washington, D.C. I found it in the National Archives, the original act. I framed it and hung it up there. As I shared earlier, I'm hoping it's still there. I know I've not been in that office recently, so I couldn't tell you if it's there or not. But it's an awe-inspiring document. When I read that document, I kid you not, I got goosebumps. This is like when I hear I Have a Dream. My grandson and my daughter and my wife and I, we read the I Have a Dream speech every year on MLK Junior Day. When I read the Gettysburg Address at the Lincoln Memorial, I get goosebumps. When I read the Justin Smith Morrill Act, I said, wow, this guy who only had an 8th grade education, by the way, not even 8th grade, an equivalent of 8th grade education, invented this great idea. In experiential education, he referred to it as military leadership. It's about critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills, and all that. Right? That is really important. Again, you're an A&M, a land grant institution. Focus on it. Make sure that every student has that experiential education before they leave here. Internships, externships, et cetera, et cetera. Last but not least is finance. Some students, they come almost to the end and oops, life happens. They don't have the money to be able to pay the tuition. What are you going to let them go? They're short only 6 credits, 8 credits, 10 credits, 12 credits. In America, we have over 40 million people like that. They just had to leave because life happened. They couldn't finish it. I dare say that your institution or as other institutions, I'm absolutely certain you can find a few dollars to be able to finish that student out. Right? Again, using data. If you don't know, you don't know. And Tim Rennick, some of you may know this guy, he's an amazing guy, Georgia State University, one of the top educators in America, did an incredible job of working with students that came from from disadvantaged communities. And if you look at their graduation rates today, they've surpassed the general population of that university. It's fantastic to be able to do it. Again, data and those kinds of finances and things were very important. So again, some more thoughts on this, right? We gotta focus on what I refer to as the fundamentals, right? The reading, writing, arithmetic, the personalized education, hands-on. Make sure, you know, we all claim, oh, I'm a student-centered institution. I say BS, because you can claim it, but show me that you are indeed. What are you doing for those students, right? Personalized services, you know, help promote, inculcate core competencies, all these experiential learning, other things that you're doing, the intrusive advising, use of predictive analytics, use data to predict what could be happening. So you got some role to play there, Srivastava, sir. And inculcation of transferable skills. As I said, the technical knowledge, engineering, econ, whatever else, it's only as good as 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. But these critical thinking, problem solving and all, it's lifelong. It's completely transferable that you want to think of. A second area is holistic support services. Not just, yeah, we got student support services here. Oh, yeah, we do student counseling. Oh, yeah, we do career counseling and all that. Right? We got all these buildings with their, you know, beautiful signage and all that. And the adage is, you build and they shall come. No, A lot of students are loath to showing up because they don't want to be targeted as, oh, yeah, that person, that student needs some help, right? It's like sitting in class and putting your hand up to ask a question or whatever, because everybody's going to start laughing at you. Right? So we got to offer holistic services, just-in-time grant making, and connections to social networks. There is a reason why these institutions are needed, like Prairie View and the others, these brick and mortar institutions. It creates a social construct. But are we doing enough to create that social construct? You know, yeah, we got clubs, you know, we got the whatever club, you know, mountaineering club or swimming club or whatever else that we've got. But again, do all students know about it? Have you reached out to them, inviting them? I heard on NPR last night as I was driving from the airport to here. There's a young woman at University of Utah. You know, she created this effort for a Black student union there. And then, of course, the elections happened. And actually, prior to that, all this anti-DEI, anti-CRT things happened in Utah, along with a few other states, one of the first states to start putting their, you know, clamping down on that. And so they shut it down. She said, okay, we're going to go out to where the action is. So they go out on campus and they meet up with the students face to face in their own space. You don't necessarily have to have an edifice to be able to make this happen. That's what she did. Amazing. And she did it as a student, by the way. The university shut it down. They told her you can't use the word Black in the student union. So that's, you know, that's that. I think we should be promoting those kinds of things as educators as well. Issues related to mental health. Empower faculty and staff. We got to empower them. You know, your provost asked me, oh, what do you think about AI and all that? I said, great, fantastic. But you got to have the humans in the middle. Most, if not all of our faculty need training on AI and technology and things like that. It's not about, you know, oh yeah, I'm using PowerPoint. No, there's more than that. Right now, yeah, I got ChatGPT on my phone or my computer. I know I'll ask ChatGPT to write an essay for me. No, that's not it. How do we incorporate that into advising, into how we support our students and things like that too? Our faculty and staff need that training and education and to use data and professional development. Also, our faculty and staff are having mental health issues. The pandemic, if there's one thing that it showed us, was the intense scrutiny and intense level of discomfort that our faculty and staff were subject to as well. What do we do about mental health? I tell you, we did a lot of things in the Pacific Northwest. And I can talk about on and on about the kinds of things that we did over there. And then, of course, using digital technologies to stay in touch with the students and faculty and staff, you know, find out what's happening. You know, you want to get to where the students are, where the faculty are, where the staff are as well. So there's also, you know, what I really love this thing, this deeming cycle, the PDSA cycle. It's a systematic process that's referring to this idea of continuous process improvement. And what, you know, deeming refers to is, first of all, you plan. Make sure you planned it right. When you're teaching a class, you plan it out. Just don't go in there, so, yeah, here's a chalk, and, well, I guess people don't use chalks anymore. At my time I did. I used a chalk and chalkboard and all that too. Some of you probably recognize that, right? And, oh no, here today, I got my computer, I got my PowerPoint slides and all that too. That's not it. There's more to it than that. You got to really think this through a little bit, because it's about student success in them. It's about closing those achievement gaps. That's what it's all about. Then the implementation part of it. And then you've got the study. Make sure you're evaluating, right? If you don't evaluate, people in the world of extension and all that, they do this all the time, right? Evaluation is a really important aspect of this. I want to make sure you're heading in the right direction. Where are you going? Right? You're taking, you know, these milestones and your pulse checks that you're taking as well. And then you act. Bring all this together into this whole enterprise of continuously improving. And it's called the PDSA, the Plan, Do, Study, Act, that deeming, so, you know, I'm a huge proponent of this approach of, you know, really thinking this in a very systematic manner. in a very thoughtful manner, that you come up with a path forward that helps you promote the students to succeed in the things that they want to do. Oops. Okay, and there are certain measures for students, student achievement measures. But if we're talking about student achievement gaps, student success, then we better be looking at some measures, data, right? Our role, our responsibility literally is the students. That's it. The reason that, how many of your faculty? Okay, how many staff? Okay, how many students? Okay, the students, put your hands up, please. That's who you're here for as a professor. Thank you. As a staff member. That's who it's about. It's not that I got a paycheck. I'm here because of a paycheck. If that's the case, get out of here. Go do something else. Maybe you get a better paycheck someplace else. Right? There's a commitment, there's a passion to this whole thing. Right? This is about the students. And I used to give a lot of talks in the old days. I co-opted Bill Clinton's famous statement from the 1992 elections. And I started saying, it's the students, stupid. As a matter of fact, I've, some of the titles that I've written about and given speeches about it's the students, stupid. That's what it's all about. We've got to be reminded. Our role, our responsibility really is about the students. That's what we're here for. We're getting paid a pretty dang good salary because those students are bringing their money here. They're taking loans, etc. Or maybe working 2 or 3 different jobs to be able to come here as well. Disaggregate the data. We must, regardless of what's happening in the national conversation and things like that. If you do not disaggregate by, these different characteristics that you've got, again, use the ones that are most relevant to you. By the way, Pell eligibility itself is a wonderful proxy. Don't even look at race or ethnicity or whatever else. Pell eligibility is a fantastic proxy. The school lunch program participation is another incredibly fantastic proxy. In fact, NIH and NIFA started using that as a proxy to be able to look at how do you make it more inclusive, and in terms of the grantsmanship and things like that as well. Also, you want to have peer comparators. Make sure, how does Prairie View compare against other peers that you've got? Who are your peers? Define it. And not just on the athletic field. I'm talking about the academic field as well. And then focusing on the continuous improvement, being completely transparent. The students, their parents, alumni, society at large needs to know what it is that Prairie View is doing. The whole world needs to know, like they say, when you open up, shed some sunlight on it, it's going to disinfect. All this crud that builds up can be disinfected by opening it up. And it really informs strategies about allocation of resources and mitigate gaps and things. Okay? What are the opportunities as you think about this, as you go forward? There's plenty of opportunities, right? With peer comparators. How do I do against my peers? Whoever the peers are. Is it Tuskegee? Is it some other institution that you've got? Again, you've got your discipline-specific peers as well, not just at the college level, not just at the university level, and at different levels you've got. And you got to, again, use data. By the way, these data are readily available on graduation rates and completion rates and things like that too. And so the accreditors, we all started working together to make available data collectively, SAC, COC, and us, Northwest Commission. We developed a collaborative effort with Gates Fund, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funding to create the construct to be able to do that as well. Learning outcomes. Define the learning out. What is it the student needs to know when they graduate? How do you assess it? That informs you in terms of your decisions that you're going to make as well. And by the way, we're the first accreditor to approve a 3-year baccalaureate degree in America. And now others are stepping in too. SAC-COC is starting to do that as well. So if you've got ideas on creating 3-year degree programs rather than 4-year degree program, look at it. There's no reason why you should not. Yeah? There are different models of these accelerated baccalaureate degrees, not just 3 years. And it's an opportunity. If you've not utilized it, if you've not had conversations about it, you want to incorporate that into your thinking as well. There's about 46 million non-traditional students that are out there. The students that did some college and then life happened, they have to leave. They're in service. And we've got approximately about 3 to 9 million veterans. They're all an, wonderful opportunity to bring in to help complete their education, get reskilled and upskilled so they can go do great things in life that they want, whatever it is that they choose to do. Prison education program. This is another, again, the Northwest Commission was one of the first one to actually approve prison education programs. We've got a thriving, so the recidivism in individuals that are in prison that get advanced education, post-secondary education, recidivism drops off very significantly. So if Prairie View is not doing it, that's something you want to think of. How can we incorporate that into the educational outcomes that we want to get our students? Course numbering. It's an interesting, you think that we had CIP codes we invented a long time ago. But apparently, maybe in Texas, it's a different story. We have a number of states where every university has its own way of numbering these courses. Community colleges have a different way of doing it too. So you really don't know what's comparable here. If a student wants to transfer, and student, like I said, honeybee metaphor, they want to go here, go there, etc. Right? How do you make sure that the learnings that they've got are all comparable? If they took Math 101 at this institution, is that good enough for them to come here and take Math 102 in my institution? Right? You got to have some commonality in these efforts as well. And some states, it's crazy how disparate. Oregon, they're a progressive state. They're not way out there. No, they're like in the Middle Ages, I think, in terms of course numbering and all that too. Dual credit and transfer credit. Texas, by the way, tip of my hat to your state. You've done a phenomenal job of these dual credit. Kids in high school taking college credit and then seamlessly transferring, coming in, moving in as well, because they're that much ahead of the rest of the group as well. That achievement that's going to happen to that student is fantastic, right? So promoting that and really working with the local schools to develop these courses and things like that together. Co-requisites, a lot of times, and you know this, we say, oh, the student didn't get a good education at the school they went to, so we're going to put them in remedial classes. We're like one of the worst things that we can do to a student. Right? You're saying, I'm picking on you because you're worthless. You're not good enough. You don't pass muster. Therefore, you go to this remediation. It doesn't make sense. There's a body of literature. Oregon is, by the way, one of the trendsetters in this area of co-requisite education, right? They're taking their regular classes and they take this, where they're needing to be pulled up as well in reading and writing and math and things like that too. Excellent way to ensure that students stay with it and not become demoralized and say, I'm out of here. Alternative credentials, micro-credentials. That's where the action's at. You don't necessarily have to go to a university or college. You get a 4-year degree, baccalaureate degree. Now you can get a 3-year baccalaureate degree, 90 credit hour degree and things like that. There's also certificate programs and micro-credentials and things like that. That's where these Google University and others are eating your lunch, by the way. They're offering those kinds of things. And some universities and colleges have stepped up. Community colleges have stepped up as well to offer these alternative credentials and micro-credentials. Faculty participation in accreditation, really, really important. And staff, I should have said faculty, staff, and students. You got to be engaged. This is your baby. It's not, somebody else's baby. If you don't say anything at all, you have no say in the matter. That's really important to participate. And oh, by the way, SAC-COC, your accreditor, the Southern Association, offers all manner of workshops and things like that. If you've not invited them, have them come here. They'll willingly come here, offer you workshops on things. They offer education programs. Their annual conference, how many of you have been to the SAC-COC annual conference? Nobody? Well, you're missing out. It's an excellent conference. as I shared with the provost here, I was there, I was invited to do a speech, and I happened to bump into Jim Palmer again at that in Atlanta here last year, I believe. And it's an excellent conference, by the way. You learn lots of things there. In fact, Dean, you should encourage your faculty and staff and students to participate in it. You know, it's in your region. There you go. He's put his hand up, his thumb up, by the way. So I'd catch him and say, yeah, I want to go to it. It's coming up in December, their conference, by the way. I think it's in Tennessee this year. And I want to leave you with this. As it turned out, it was perfect for me, the congruence. This Panther principle is something that the Food and Agricultural Organization came up with a few years ago. And I said, oh, whoa, well, look at this. I'm going to Panther country here. And very simply, it is about our individual rights that we've got. As students, as faculty, as staff, as just a human being, I've got this right, right? Don't nobody let you say you don't have and take it away from you, right? P for participation. We want everybody to feel that they're part of it. They're offered an opportunity to participate because it's ours collectively, not mine. Accountability. We all got to be held accountable. We just can't say, well, I took my little bit and adios, I'm out of here. We got to be held accountable. That's, participation requires that accountability piece of it as well. Non-discrimination. We should not be discriminating anybody for any reason. Doesn't matter where they come from, what their background is, etc. And that's a principle that you stand for. It's something that I got to stand for. Transparency, right? Again, sunlight is the best disinfectant. We got to be transparent about the decisions we make, things that we say, we do, and all that too. Human dignity. We got to, really deal with people and treat them with dignity, with grace, with humility. Can't go around like, I'm the professor and shit don't stink. Right? We got to do it with grace, with humility. Human dignity is a really important part of this effort as well. That's what education is all about. Is to inculcate this idea of human dignity, empowering people to do the great things they want to do, whatever that individual wants to do. We want to empower them, enfranchise them. That's what education is about, higher education is about. Adhering to the rule of law, that going back to the democracy and civic engagement and things like that. We got to. Sadly, what's happening is that there are people that think they're above the law. That's what's happening in this country at the highest levels. But we got to adhere to the rule of law. That's what it's all. Human societies were formed because we had certain rules and regulations and expectations. If we don't, it's anarchy. It's chaos. That's what ends up happening because the strongest, this whole thing about social Darwinism, right? Survival of the fittest, right? Don't be coming to me and saying you need Medicaid or you need whatever. No, I worked hard for it. It's my money. I don't want to give it to you. Right? That's what's happening. Okay. So that's the Panther principle. This is our right that we've got, but there's an expectation that we got to be full participants and be held accountable as well. So I want to leave you with this very last slide here. Abraham Lincoln, one of my favorite presidents, and when this terrible war that we had between the states, where one group of people were subjugated to slavery, and we needed to tear that apart. Stop doing that. As the war ends, in his eloquent manner, he gives a speech, and he ends it. America needs to get beyond all of this. We got to think anew and act anew, and not be blaming others. We got to do it. We got to own this. That's what he talks about, right? I want to leave you with that. Thank you very much. Questions?
Wow, this is amazing. Thank you. This is a very, very great speech and a talk and a vision includes a lots of information. I know it's past time, but we would like to take a few minutes to entertain a few questions. This is a rare opportunity that I think you would like to take advantage of. Anybody who has any question or comment for our speaker? I know I'm between you and lunch, I
There's a question
understand.
there. Yeah, if you want to tell me who you are too, please. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a man of few words, as you figured out, right? So,
Thank you, Dr. Ramaswamy, for being here. I'm Ashley Abor-Shade. I work in the Food Security Research Center as a program specialist. My question is slightly off topic, but very relevant. I'm wondering if you know about the military deployment in DC right now, what the purpose behind it is. And I understand that it's going to be like rolled out in other places.
Can you
So-
please repeat the question because
Yeah,
we didn't
yeah.
have a mic?
so the question is sort of unrelated to the conversation that we just had, the topic that I spoke to, is about the deployment of the National Guard in different cities, starting with Washington DC. Well, it was actually LA, Los Angeles, right? So I'd say I'm usually one that speaks to it directly. I've never shied away from responding to it. But in this particular case, I have no clue, like the rest of us. We have no clue as to what the motivation is to go in. I mean, I can speculate, I can tell you all these things that I would speculate about, but it would be inappropriate for me to speculate because, I don't know. And I don't live and work in Washington DC anymore. I moved to the Pacific Northwest, to Seattle, Washington, so I couldn't tell you. I'm so sorry. But maybe offline, we could talk a little bit more.
Any other question?
There's a question right there in front.
Well, if you
No,
don't,
no,
I'll-
no, sorry,
oh,
Ken.
I'm sorry, sorry, I didn't see you. I was behind.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation. My name is Chandra Adams. I'm from a rural community. And it's one thing I've noticed, no one wants to take responsibility, accountability. And those who do, you are shunned or discouraged or just exiled. So how would I encourage students to keep fighting?
Well, thanks so much for that, Ms. Adams. So Ms. Adams' question is really about how do we, have students and others own what it is that they are doing. She used the term accountability and responsibility. It is really owning it, right? How do we inculcate that? And I think we got to, incorporate that into our classes that we teach, the experiential learning efforts that we promote. We also got to make sure that we're living by example, right? We model good behavior. And again, we absolutely have a role to play in modeling good behavior as well. If I made a mistake, I'll fess up. I'm sorry I made a mistake. And then we go from there, to get to a better spot. And I'm a huge proponent and a believer in continuous process improvement. This accountability and responsibility and owning it is all from that perspective. Is if we can convey to our students, our staff, our colleagues, if you were to focus on owning this, we're not going to laugh at you. We're not going to penalize you. I think one of the issues that we've got, a lot of people think they're going to get penalized or they're going to be laughed at or whatever it is. And we got to demonstrate that that's not going to happen. And we got to do it again by modeling that sort of behavior.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. How do we build from that?
Using that model again, helping other students, other faculty and staff seeing that. One of the things that I've seen that's been done very well in many institutions is that they have these workshops where they do these role playing and things like that, and where they set up these what if scenarios and using those what if scenarios to think this through. And going back to this idea of these transferable skills, one of which is really owning it. One of us is really saying, I have a role in this, I have a responsibility in this. And doing those kinds of things. And you can incorporate that into, if you're teaching a class or doing workshops for staff and faculty as well, is to incorporate those sorts of experiential learning opportunities as well. And I found that to be very powerful. Institutions that have done it, they say, like, for example, West Point, has been at it for a very long time. It's a military academy, right? They've been at it for a very long time, and they've incorporated that into their, educational programming and things like that. Because, if you're a soldier, if you don't own it, it's toast. Everybody's going to be dead, right? And so that's how they inculcate that idea as well, that we all have a responsibility.
We have a question here, and we're going to take another online before we conclude.
Thank you, Dr. Ramaswamy. I enjoyed your presentation and I was 100% awake and fully alert because I liked it.
I saw you.
I have always been an opponent of formula funding, number of student class holding, and I think we need to rethink of that and find out other formulas of distribution of resources.
Yeah.
I think that's the main root of and drawbacks in our education right now at this. And then some of, as you pointed out quickly, I mean, directly and hit the target in the nose, that the emerging needs of the society, the trend in the emerging needs are changing according to time. And we need to gear our education. Does not have to be 4-year courses, 4-year certain rigid discipline structured. So that's another drawback that I see in our system. And this is just a short comment. This is just a short comment, and in the interest of time, as you said, the Chinese will beat the hell out of us in a few years because they are going ahead of us in every direction, in every field. And very soon we will be just sitting there and looking at them, what will they do and how we can learn from them. So there needs to be a serious formula funding or different type of allocation of resources for education. Thank you.
Well, I'd say amen, brother. But I want to respond only to that funding part of it. And what has happened is in America, we've evolved over the last, since the Republic was formed, it's going to be 250 years next year, right? Where we had one group of individuals that were held, subjugated as slaves. Okay? Then the other group ruled everything. They got all the resources. This group didn't get anything at all. And so what has happened is over time, we're trying to figure out what's the most optimal way to make sure that resources are made available. And so going back about, Justin Smith Morrill, and then the 1887 Hatch Act, and the 1914 Smith-Lever Act, and, the 1890, Land Grant Act, and then the 1994 Equity in Education Act, and so on. All these came along really to figure out how to redress these disparities. Okay. And we do have a formula funding program. Actually, it goes back to the money that's distributed, not just to 1890s institutions like Prairie View, but even the 1862s like Texas A&M and all these. They get the money based on, I'm talking about NIFA funds only, okay? The word formula is what you use. And I'll come back to education as well in just a second. So the way it's done is based on the number of congressional representatives, right? And the number of acres of land that is being farmed. So when I was the director of NIFA, we came up with that, I didn't come up with it. It had already been there and we tweaked it a little bit. And that's how money is sent. And I can tell you, we had, again, I can go on and on about this, about the history of this nation, the sordid, fraught history of this nation. And one group of individuals has continued to be given the short end of the stick. I saw the data. Okay? We're talking about, Gerard and I were talking about the matching funds that you got to get as well. We had the Jim Crow laws and all that in the 1800s. And then, it was later on called separate but equal. And I've seen the data. It's separate but unequal, has been unequal. Where University 1862 gets 100% or even more of its match for NIFA funds. the 1890s, 1994, forget it. 1890s, if they got 50 cents on the dollar, they're very lucky. Okay, now some states have done a better job of it because we got data and we showed that this is indeed, they're being shortchanged. Right, things are getting a little bit better, but the formula funds has been, you know, it's an interesting approach. But going back to how the states allocate money for students, it's done based on the number of students, right? So students coming in, Prairie View gets 2,000 students, this is how we're gonna do it. But what the University of Tennessee did, they changed the model a little bit. They said, we're gonna look at outcomes, right? Not just student coming in, it's not butts on seats, right? That's the formula that we've got in most states, is butts on seats. If you've got 100 butts, you get so many dollars. But what Tennessee did was, how many of those butts leave? And we'll give you money based on that, right? It's a performance-based budgeting. Okay, now other states are starting to look at it too, because it's performance-based budgeting. So there's some movement along those lines, by the way. So there's a lot of conversation, and I think it's appropriate to, you know, rethink how we do these things too, because we got to be going back to the question that Ms. Adams asked, right? It's about the accountability. What's our responsibility? We got to make sure that our students are graduating. So we should be, in quotes, compensated for that part of it, not because we're just bringing in a whole bunch of students. That becomes a mill for you to bring students in. So.
I think the discussion is really rich, and there is an opportunity for those of you who are interested in furthering talking to Dr. Ramaswamy here. So in CARC room 04, to join him at between 2 and 3:30, there is another opportunity for you to connect with him. We want to take a group photo. So before that, if you can, to be fair to the people online, there is a question. Two questions that are almost have some similarities there. I think you touched about AI in classrooms, and also the international students were unable to come, etc., which basically hurting some of the graduate program and other programs. So maybe if you can shed some lights on those quickly, that will be great. And
quickly, that's the operative word. You know, he's known me for a few years. I mean, I'm a man of few words, right? I don't say much at all.
we're gonna take a group picture after this question, okay?
Well, I mean, I think we recognize it. You know, the international students have been literally a critically important part of this country's growth and development since John F. Kennedy said, we're going to put a man on the moon. Right? Lots and lots of foreign students came here, and they brought, you know, incredible level of knowledge and expertise, and persevered in creating these enterprises and things like that. What's happening is, you know, international students are rather going to Europe. I'm helping them, by the way. Many of the students go to Europe, go to Australia, go to Canada, go to Asia, go study in China, go study in Japan, or whatever it is. And it's our loss. It's a very short-sighted approach that we're taking. That is the xenophobia. It's you know, again, don't want to get into the sort of politics of the moment and things like that we've got. But I think it's a very short-sighted approach to what has brought vitality to this nation over the last many decades. And so I lament as well, along with Lal Almis, that you know, this is the situation that we've got. And I'm going to do my little bit to help people. You know, I'm helping federal scientists that have been fired, helping them find jobs in other places, and faculty that have lost their grants. I'm helping them figure out where to get money from, you know, foundations and other places as well. So we got to do every little bit that we can to support the enterprise.